There are some new cold weather alerts that you need to know going into winter 2024 to 2025. I'm 13 News meteorologist Matt Standridge. The National Weather Service has been reevaluating all their different alerts because there are a lot of them and they can get confusing. But there's specific alerts for very specific events. Recently, the National Weather Service is working on their Hazard Simplification Project. And so what that is where they take alerts and figure out, okay, what do we need? What do we don't need? Can we combine some alerts? Can we consolidate? Can we replace different alerts? Can we rename things to make it a little bit more simple and then also just more understandable as we get into extreme weather, whether it's cold, it's hot, it's severe. But this is specifically talking about winter weather alerts. Let's talk about what is new starting October 2024. Over here on the left, these are previous alerts. And then over time, this is what they've been changed to. So let's start with some watches. We've got extreme cold watches and wind chill watches. Essentially what's going on with all of these is that when you have cold air, sometimes it's windy and sometimes it's not. Well, National Weather Service is kind of going with this phrase, cold is cold, whether it's windy or not. So instead of having separate ones where it's just cold without a wind or cold with a wind, so wind chill watch, it's just going to be extreme cold watch, regardless of what the wind is doing. But that's where it's the job of local meteorologists and the National Weather Service to include in the forecast to say, hey, it's going to be cold, but just so you know, the winds are going to be really bad. Or it's going to be cold, but the winds, not so bad. Then we get to warnings. Essentially, this is what is actively happening right now or is just about to happen. So same thing with the watches. You've got extreme cold warnings and wind chill warnings. These are now just becoming extreme cold warnings. So the watch means we're more than 24 hours out, usually 24 to 36 hours out. But if it's just about to happen, then it's a warning. So basically the same thing with these first two. Just one's a watch, one's a warning. And then you've got the kind of lesser alert, the advisory, where it's cold, but it's not nearly as cold. So for the warnings, that is colder than negative 25 degrees. Cold weather advisories are at least negative 15 to negative 25. So instead of having a wind chill advisory, we actually don't have an extreme cold advisory at all, just wind chill advisory. That's just going to be named cold weather advisory to kind of go with the theme, just saying cold, and if it's a warning or a watch or an advisory. So that's a simplification on cold weather alerts. Now let's specifically talk about freeze alerts. So here on the left, you've got what we previously had, freeze watches and hard freeze watches. And the same thing with warnings. So watches, warnings. Freezes, technically different from a hard freeze. A normal freeze is when temperatures are getting to 32 degrees. Hard freeze are when we go down to 28 degrees. The reason why that's different and why we call it different things is hard freezes, another way to say it would be killing freezes. When you hit 28, you really start to damage plants or you kill them off, especially the sensitive plants. Usually once you get a hard freeze, that's it for the rest of the growing season. The growing season is officially over. And, plants just going into winter won't get hurt anymore because they're already cold and got most of their damage already. So that's the difference between hard freeze and a freeze. At 32 degrees with a normal freeze, some plants are damaged, some are still fine. It's the hard freeze that's kind of the final straw. So what they've decided to do, instead of getting in the weeds between freezes and hard freezes, now there's just a freeze watch and a freeze warning. So a freeze watch will be issued more than 24 hours out to say, hey, tomorrow morning or 2 days from now or so, 24 to 36 hours, I believe, there's going to be really cold air, giving you a heads up that, hey, you may want to cover things or you just need to know it's done. The growing season completely over. And a warning, it's either happening that night or it is currently happening. So that's the difference between the watch and the warning, just a simplification process. But now, kind of the more complicated part will be because we get one of these freeze watches or freeze warnings is to explain, okay, this is kind of the level. These are the impacts of what you can expect. So they'll issue the freeze watch and then it'll be our job to say, okay, it's a killing freeze or it's a fairly damaging freeze, but we're not quite to killing freeze, just depending on that temperature. 32 degrees and then hard freezes were 28 degrees. Now it's just all going to be 32 degrees. If 32 degrees or lower, just a freeze watch or freeze warning will go into effect. Speaking of freezes, our first freeze coming up very shortly in October. Got a couple different colors here. Much of the state, so especially northern Indiana, eastern Indiana, and western Indiana, mid-October is usually that first freeze. And we're going with the traditional freeze, 32 degrees. Hard freeze is usually another 2 weeks or so, give or take, depending on where you live. Closer to Indianapolis, late October. Some of this is that urban heat island effect that keeps temperatures just a little bit warmer, closer to Indy compared to getting outside the city. Late October is what we generally expect for Hamilton County, Marion County, Johnson County, Shelby County, Hancock County, and then even Morgan County as well. But this is kind of interesting. You notice this kind of dips south with the earlier time date. That's because some of these valleys, parts of Bloomington, they're in Monroe County, Brown County, it can get pretty cool, especially when there's no wind. So we really drop temperatures out towards the south and west with some of our valleys. And then right at the bottom of the map for extreme southern Indiana, we're talking more towards New Albany, Clarksville, Jeffersonville, just the kind of the Louisville suburbs, early November. So we've still got some time until that freeze. But once again, the killing freeze is usually a couple weeks after this. You could probably move the zones just a little bit. So you're probably going to see some new alerts here shortly. Freeze watches and freeze warnings. No longer will we have more distinctions between different types of freezes. We'll just let you know. But from the alert standpoint that pops up on your phone or whatever your weather app is, there won't be that distinction anymore. Once again, it's the Hazard Simplification Project. A lot of different alerts being kind of whittled down to maybe 1 or 2 to help make things a little bit more simpler as we're trying to communicate the different impactful weather that's headed your way.